So, 1 second. Okay, so again, welcome to FAFSA Friday. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Again, my name is DeVonte. DJ Jackson, and I will be presenting today over contributors. I am very happy to be delivering this presentation today concerning a new term that will be on the FAFSA, the 2024-25 FAFSA. So let's get started. Okay, so let's go over our agenda. I'll be covering what is a contributor, the expectation of the contributor or contributors, steps to follow, and frequently asked questions. So the contributor is going to be a new term for the 24-25 FAFSA, and it refers to anyone, including a student, student spouse, the student's parent, step parent, or preparer, who's required to provide information on the FAFSA form. The student's answers on the FAFSA form will determine which contributors, if any, will be required to provide information. Notably, a contributor is not a grandparent, foster parent, legal guardian, brother or sister, aunt, uncle, or even anyone that helped provide or raise the student. Additionally, being a contributor does not implicate financial responsibility. Additionally, if a student is considered an independent student, varying from how they will be answering their questions on the FAFSA, they would not need to invite a contributor. Students or parents can invite a contributor to complete their portion on the FAFSA form by entering their name, date of birth, social security, and email address. Next, we're going to take a look at some of the answers or student personal circumstances that will determine if a student will need a contributor. So as you see here, here are screenshots from the demo prototype that was released fairly recently. Here we have a few of the answers the students can select from. Here on the left, as you see, it gives certain number of criteria that varies over a different array of things. So keep in mind that this demo does not necessarily reflect how the FAFSA form will look for the student in December, but it is highly likely. I want to note on this left side here, if the student selects any of the options that exclude none of these apply, the student will be identified as an independent student. But if the student is under the age of 24 and does select none of these apply and answers no to the question on the right-hand side, as you can see, is asking, was a student unaccompanied or either homeless or self-supporting or at risk of being homeless? So if they identify that as no, they will be considered as a dependent and will need to answer questions about, will need to provide their parents' information to the FAFSA. In the same scenario, if the student selects yes to that question, they will be, in fact, be identified as independent and will be the sole contributor and will not need their parents' input on their FAFSA. Notably, parents will be given the same options to select from when completing their portion of the FAFSA. So next, we're going to be getting into the expectation of the contributors. So all contributors will need to have a verified FAFSA ID to file 24-25 FAFSA. Contributors must provide their personal and financial information in their own sections on the FAFSA. Very, very key. Each contributor will need to provide consent. So consent will allow for the federal tax information to be included on the FAFSA. And so according to the Future Act, all students and contributors must provide consent for the following, which includes having their federal tax information transferred directly into the FAFSA form via the direct data exchange with IRS. Also have their federal tax information used to determine the student's eligibility for federal student aid, and also allow the U.S. Department of Education to share its federal tax information with the post-secondary institutions and state higher education agencies for use in the awarding and administering financial aid. If any contributors does not provide their consent, the student aid index will not be calculated, and consequently the FAFSA form will be incomplete, resulting in the student being ineligible for federal student aid. So it is very, very key for the students and the contributors to provide consent. Even if students or contributors do not have a social security number or didn't file taxes or file taxes outside of the U.S., they still will need to provide consent. So let's take a look at the necessary steps that a contributor must follow in order to successfully navigate and complete their portion of the FAFSA. So first step is they will be receiving an email that they have been identified as a contributor. Next, they will need to create a student aid .gov account if they do not already have one. And so they will need to, once they create that, they will need to create an FSA ID, which will get them into that account. Next, they will need to review information about completing their section of the FAFSA form. They will need to provide the required personal and financial information, which includes consent and approval on the student's FAFSA. Once the contributor receives the notification that they have been elected, they will need to provide their name, date of birth, social security number, email address, and we'll take a look at some screenshots of how that will look for this.
DJ? I think we might have DJ froze. Hold on, folks. Sorry about the tech difficulties. Let's see. So as DJ was saying, we were going to provide some screenshots of what the invitation to contributors will look like. And so let me pull up the PowerPoint that he was using. Give me 1 second to do that. Okay. Can you all see that? Dominisha, can you see that? Thumbs up. Okay. All right. So, so this is what the invitation will look like for a student when they go in to invite their contributor. So you'll see that this is from the demo FAFSA. So it has information filled in, but it's demo information. And so the student would need to indicate the parent's name, date of birth, social security number, and email address. And it should be said that the information has to be exactly accurate. So similar to in the past when students and parents have created federal student aid IDs, those data points need to be correctly aligned with what the Social Security Administration has on record in order for them to be able to receive the invitation and successfully match up with the student's FAFSA. This is what the email will look like when the parent or other contributor receives the invitation. So you'll see that it gives some information about what serving as a contributor means, as well as what it does not mean. I want to point out down here where it says that forms are deleted after 45 days of inactivity. So that's really key. If a student is proactive about getting in and starting the FAFSA the first day it opens, and their contributors are not as quick, it may ultimately mean the student has to go back in and complete part of their portion. So it's going to be really critical for contributors to recognize this and to be proactive about responding to the invitation. So when a contributor logs in with their FSA ID, they will see this blue box on the top about an invitation to work as a contributor on their student's FAFSA. So hopefully they will indicate get started as opposed to decline invitation. Now, I do want to point out that this image reflects additional information about the contributor. And so I think for those of us who work in the spaces that we do, who may be helping at some point with larger scale FAFSA completion events, need to be mindful of the fact that we will potentially encounter parents and step parents and other adults who are going to be pulling this information up and need to be sensitive to the fact that it's going to reflect other aspects of their relationship with federal student aid that are not necessarily ours to know about. So just a little bit of a sense of that recognition and being mindful of confidentiality would be important. So the student does have the ability to see in real time the names of the contributors, the request date that the date that their request was made, and then the status. I did see a new screenshot yesterday that does give me an indication that this status will change once the contributor acts upon the invitation. So I don't yet know exactly all of the language that will be reflected here, but my sense is that as contributors accept the invitation, that status may change from invite sent to drafted or something along those lines, and then complete or finished once the contributor has gone in and done their portion. I think I am working off of a slightly older version of DJ's PowerPoint. And so I know that there were some frequently asked questions that he had added and that I just want to be sure to share with you. So one of the things that DJ referenced and that I know Grace covered in her first the first FAFSA Friday a few weeks ago is just a reminder that contributors without a social security number will be able to create an FSA ID. That process is not live yet, and the most recent information from federal student aid indicates that contributors who do not have a social security number will not be in a position to create those until sometime in December. In addition, there will be circumstances where students need two contributors. So most data seems to indicate, or most information indicates, that this will be tied heavily to tax filing status of the student's parent or parents. So in the event that the student lives in a two-parent headed household and the parents filed their taxes as a married joint return, it is likely that only one parent will need to serve as a contributor, similar to how this has been done in the past. So one parent will have an FSA ID, they will log in and provide consent and approval for the tax information for them and their spouse. However, if the parents are married but filed their taxes separately, if the student lives with both biological parents and they are unmarried but living together, and in some other tax filing circumstances, the student may require two contributors. They may require both parents. And in those circumstances, both contributors will need to have their own FSA ID. Both contributors will need to log in independently to complete the questions that are specific to them as an individual and their tax circumstances. So I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions about contributors that we can answer for you. Dominisha, I'm hoping you can help me with the chat since I've got the screen share pulled up. Feel free to unmute yourself as well if you've got questions. Oh, I see
Our
Ivy's
hand
got
being
it.
raised. Yeah.
Yeah. Ivy, do you want to go ahead and?
Sorry, friends, I'm driving and I joined late.
That's
So,
okay.
and the same questions will apply for a student to determine independent status, like legal guardianship, uh, homelessness, things like that, right?
Correct. Yes. They have
Okay.
sort of renamed those questions personal circumstances on this year's FAFSA, but they are essentially the same thing and serve the same purpose. They have also renamed the process for students who do not meet the status of independent student, but who cannot get parent information. So that has been renamed unusual circumstances, which is a bit of problematic language in my opinion. And that is still a similar process though, where essentially a student will be navigating what's called the dependency override process. So yes.
Okay. And then because I was late, I don't know if this, so in the case of the divorced parent, and one parent is remarried, who are the contributors?
Yeah, so the contributor piece is similar but a little bit different than in the past. This year and moving forward, they are not looking at physical custody, so it's no longer the necessarily the parent who has physical custody of the student. It is supposed to be the parent who provided more than 50% of the financial support in the past 12 months. So in the case of divorced parents, the student and their parents would need to identify which parent provided more than 50% of the financial support. Federal student aid has not released a ton of great guidance on how to help families evaluate that. And I don't think it's our place as practitioners to tell students which parent to use, but I think it's helpful to start creating a list of questions or things that students might talk to their families about. So, does one parent cover car insurance or health insurance or a car note, some kind of larger expenses that might tip the scales in one parent's, I don't want to say in one parent's favor, but toward one parent as being the parent who's primarily responsible for the student's financial support. That's the parent who goes on the FAFSA. If that parent is remarried, then the step parent is required. Now, what federal student aid has been very clear about though is that if the parents in a situation like a divorce say that really no, it's 50-50 financial support to the student is supposed to, per federal student aid, provide the information for the parent who has the greater income. And I recognize that that is different than what many practitioners have advised for a very long time. I am simply passing along the requirement that federal student aid has made clear in their updates this year about the 24-25 FAFSA. I think DJ has joined us back. And I see, so I see there's another question here about, so I think to your question, Amy, it's similar to what we were just speaking about. It really, they won't need to include the other parent as a contributor unless the parents are married. So if they don't live with that parent and that parent does not provide more than 50% of the financial support and they're not married to the parent that they are living with, then no, they would not need to include that individual as a contributor. So DJ, I think I got through a big chunk of what you had, but I don't know that I had all of the updated slides. And so I think I'm missing your FAQ page. So I'm going to stop share and maybe you can share back and we can see the remaining FAQs that you had before we wrap up.
Okay.
While we do that, can I throw in another question?
Sure thing, Ivy.
Loved the publication you guys shared with us in terms of like what is an FSA ID and all the things that parents and students can keep track of. I've been using that in my office a lot. So thank you for that. And so I'm wondering if there might be a nice cheat sheet or reference sheet that would say, give us who is a contributor, right? In all these scenarios.
Yeah, we don't have one, but that doesn't mean that we can't have one. So
Thanks, Teresa.
yeah. And DJ, I think we kind of talked about the first two of these, just so you're aware, but we haven't addressed this third point about what to do if the contributor hasn't received the invitation.
Okay, so first of all, sorry you all. I had some internet issues. Thank you for jumping in very swiftly, Teresa. The frequently asked question, what if a contributor does not receive the invitation email or see anything when they log in with their FAFSA ID? So if a contributor does not receive the invitation email or see anything concerning login for the FSA ID, they would simply need to double check the FAFSA to assure that the correct email address has been entered, and as that may be the reason why they may not have received the invitation. So just kind of double checking that and making sure all the information is correct. So let's see. Were there any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So here we have the upcoming 2023-24 workshops. As you see, we had one on the 4th for the financial aid basics workshop, which I attended, which went very well. Grace did a wonderful job of presenting that. But here are the other upcoming workshop opportunities for the rest of this year and leading into next year. Be sure, if any of you all are interested in registering, be sure to register at the link. I can put that in the chat as well. And then thank you. Again, sorry for the internet issues. And thank you again to Teresa. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this rendition of FAFSA Friday on contributors. I hope that you were able to gain some insight, some pertinent insights surrounding this brand new, well, not brand new term, but this new term that will be unveiled in the 24-25 FAFSA form this winter to hopefully better assist your students. Be sure to contact us if you need any further assistance. Be sure to do so via phone or email. Also, feel free to visit our website. And then I will now open the floor for any other questions anyone might have.
I had a question. Do we yet know what the options will be if a required contributor ends up declining the invitation? I know we may have experienced that some education may go into place when we are talking to parents about the FAFSA requirements and how that can impact the student, and also how they're not responsible for providing for the students' educational expenses. But I can imagine that there may be some parents that think that they don't need to for whatever reason, and even step parents in particular. So I don't know if is there a way to like re-invite them if they happen to decline? Do we know that yet?
So as far as I know, so I hope I'm answering your question. So as far as I know, let me so what you're asking is if they decline, would they have a chance to be re-invited, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so they can be re-invited. So there is a tab to where you can kind of go back in and re-invite them on the FAFSA.
Cool, thank you. Of
course.
I would just add that any contributor who does not provide consent for the federal tax information also has the ability to go back in and change their consent from, declined to approved at any point in time. So those things all can be modified or adjusted so that the student can successfully get through FAFSA completion. So yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. And like